So today we'll be covering the structure of the cell membrane and the function of the cell membrane, okay? So we look at this whole picture, we would call this whole thing the cell membrane, okay? That's what number 1 is pointing to. These like little things that are in the middle of them, okay? These are proteins. There's another protein. Here is the lipid bilayer. These are where the fatty acid tails come together. And the transport protein looks like a protein, whoopsie, but it has this tunnel, so things can go into the cell or things can go out of the cell. And last but not least, you have your phospholipids. This is the phospho part, this is the lipid part. Phospho part and the lipid part. How many of you have learned this before? A couple of you? All right, cool. All right, so the cell membrane, what is its function? The function is to regulate what enters and leaves the cell. It also provides protection and support to the cell. And the membrane is made of a lipid bilayer, meaning double layer, in which proteins are embedded. The lipid bilayer gives the membrane a flexible structure so it can move, right? It's not it's not brittle, it doesn't just crack open, and forms a strong barrier between the inside and outside of the cell. Kind of like your skin is for you, right? So the bilayer means that it's double. That's what we talk about because there's 2 phospholipids. There's one phospholipid like this, and then one phospholipid like this, and then as you make more and more of them, that's what makes up the cell membrane layer. Make sense? We're good with that? Awesome. Many of the proteins form channels and pumps to help move materials across the membrane. And the carbohydrates, which I think I forgot to point out in the first picture. I apologize. Those carbohydrates are the little chains that you see hanging off the picture that we labeled earlier. Those are really important because they're identification markers to help individual cells to identify one another. So your immune system doesn't just go, oh, I'm going to kill off all these cells. That was this person's ear, and now they don't have an ear. Okay? Those carbohydrates say, okay, this is a healthy cell, leave it alone. This cell is infected, it needs to die, etc. Okay? And when you start losing that identification ability, that's a lot of times what turns into cancer. Because your immune system doesn't detect cancer because it looks like everything else because of the same carbohydrates on it. All right, so the whole purpose of the cell membrane, yes, that's what we're talking about, the cell membrane, is really to control homeostasis for the actual cell. This, and what we're going to talk about after this little video, is what Thursday and Friday's lab is going to be based off of, okay? So we're going to be talking about how cells maintain homeostasis and how that works in us as an entire multicellular human being, okay? So I just have this little short video on homeostasis. Please make sure you pay attention because it will definitely help you with your pre-lab questions. Hint, hint. There we go. Homeostasis. Okay, so like the little video showed you, homeostasis is a balance that organisms maintain through self-regulating adjustments. Okay? It requires self-regulation of materials going in and out. Right? Our bodies have to do that too. If you just eat food and you can't get rid of the waste, is that going to be a good thing? No, it is not. Okay? So we say the cell is an open system. It requires the constant inflow of matter and energy and the constant outflow of waste. You got to be able to bring in the oxygen, release the carbon dioxide, right? You eat some celery, you got to be able to get rid of all the celery strings and cellulose that you can't digest. Okay? So permeability of the membrane. We call this, the cell membrane, selectively permeable, okay, or semi-permeable. What does it mean to have selective hearing? If you say, oh, I have selective hearing, what's that mean? Excellent. You get to hear what you want. You pick and choose what you get to hear. A selectively permeable membrane gets to pick and choose what comes in and out. Okay? It has the ability to let one substance pass through more readily than others. Some materials are not even allowed to enter at all. So it can control the speed at which molecules are allowed to enter. Now, the concentration gradient, okay? I like to call this the movie theater rule, okay? And we'll go over it. So in the absence of other forces, materials will tend to move from an area of high concentration to an area of low concentration. Okay, so the concentration gradient, you go from high area of concentration to low area of concentration. For an example, okay, this is why I call it the movie theater rule. You might want to write that down to help you remember it. If you go to the movies, okay, here's all the seats, and there is a group of people sitting right here, right here, right here. A couple of their friends are right there, and then there's some people sitting way down here. Okay, where are you likely to sit? Okay, are you going to come sit right here? No. That would be weird, right? Would you go sit right here? No, that would be awkward also, right? Socially awkward. Hey guys, I'm just going to sit with you. I have no idea who you are. Okay? You're more than likely going to sit here where there's less concentration of people, right? You're going to want to spread out. Things have a natural tendency to want to spread out. So that's what the concentration gradient is. Materials move from an area of high concentration to lower concentration. In particular, sometimes you see this with gentlemen that like to go to the movies together. It's like a big group of friends. Sometimes all the guys will not sit right next to each other. They like to leave an empty seat. Like they might get a date in the middle of the movie or something. I guess that's very hopeful. So, okay. But does that make sense to you guys? So, if that is the cell membrane, then which area has the higher concentration, the left or the right? The left. Okay? Which one has the lower area of concentration? Perfect. So which way are these little particles going to move? They're going to move towards the right. Very good. Like that. Okay? From high to low. So if something's going with the concentration gradient, it's going from high to low. For example, we have a pep rally. You're all smashed into the gym. As soon as that bell rings, you want to start walking out of the gym, right? No one wants the daunting task of having to walk into the gym while all of you are being released out of the gym. That sounds like getting trampled to death. All right, so let's look at these sequence of pictures and describe what is happening below. So in letter A, obviously, there is a higher concentration on the top half, right? What's happening in picture B?
It's even, or they're going down.
Excellent. It's going down the concentration gradient. Very good. From higher concentration to lower concentration until it is equal. Equilibrium has been reached in picture C. So now it's the same concentration on both sides. All right? The movement will be in both directions, but the concentrations will remain equal. All right. Okay. Types of passive transport. What does passive transport mean? Does anyone know? It requires no energy. Okay? No energy is used to move the molecules across the membrane. As an adult, you want to find a way to make a passive income. Passive income is any money you make by not doing anything. Right? Doesn't that sound pretty wonderful?
I don't think that's possible. I think it's impossible.
Sometimes even having like renters is considered passive income because they're just renting out your house. You don't have to like show up to work every day to make sure that they rent out your house, right? It's a pretty cool way of making money. So, this is very important. Yes, you have to start somewhere, right? Diffusion. And make sure you star this, highlight it, draw a cat next to it. I don't care. Diffusion is the spreading out of molecules from a region of high concentration to low concentration. If you would like to abbreviate the word concentration, I usually just write, whoopsie, C-O-N-C, like concentration. All right, so diffusion is spreading out of the particles, okay? So for example, in this picture, we have a water balloon with 20% salt solution inside a cup of water that's only 5% salt solution. Which way is the salt going to move? Into the balloon or out of the balloon? Out of the balloon, right? From high to low, 20% to the 5%, until it is equal. That's what it's going to try to do. Okay, so diffusion is movement of the particles. The other kind of passive transport is called osmosis. Osmosis is different than diffusion, okay? Because osmosis is the movement of water across a membrane from high to low. So if you look at the same situation where it's 20% salt solution in one and 5% salt solution in the opposite, okay, which way is the water going to move? In or out of the balloon? In. Very good. Okay, it's going to move into the balloon because the bag is 80% water and the solution is 95% water. So to go from high to low, it has to go into the water balloon. Like so. Water in, water in. This is where I think I got a little carried away with the animations. There we go. Okay, there are 3 types of water solutions. The first one is isotonic. Who knows what iso means?
By itself.
What about an isosceles triangle?
What? Oh, 3. 4.
Huh? Excellent. Has 2 equal sides. Okay? Isotonic means equal tonicity, equal tonic. Okay? For example, if you open your eyes underwater in the ocean, does it burn?
Yes.
Yes, because the ocean is saltier than your eyes. Okay? If you pour tap water directly into your eyes, does it sting?
No.
A little bit, it should. Okay? Isotonic means the same. If you wear contacts or if you use eye drops, when you put eye drops in, they don't burn at all because they're isotonic. They're the exact same salinity as your eyeballs. Same thing when you get an IV. Have any of you had an IV before? Intravenous fluids when they... Yes. Okay, that has to be isotonic to your blood or else you will risk collapsing or exploding your veins. Hypertonic. What does it mean if you are hyperactive? You have what? More energy. Very good. So if you're hypertonic, you have more tonic, okay? It's saltier. What about hypotonic? Less. Very good. Okay? We're going to watch this video at the end, time permitting, okay? So don't worry about that. But let's fill in that data table, okay? You guys see that chart? Excuse me. So isotonic solutions, okay? The amount of water is the same on the inside and the outside of the cell. The water will still flow back and forth across the membrane, but the same rate in both directions, okay? And then make sure you label your pictures that it shows water in, water out, water in, water out. So the concentration of water is equal on both sides. So the cell's happy. Okay? Types of solutions. Hypertonic. This means the solution has that there is more water on the inside of the cell than on the outside of the cell. So there is a net movement of water out of the cell, and eventually it just collapses. So the water moves out. Okay, this is like what happens if you are swimming in a pool or you're in the ocean for a long time. What happens to your fingers and toes? They look all wrinkly, right? Because the water is actually moving out of your skin cells, and they are starting to shrink. We call this plasmolysis, is when too much water moves out and the cell collapses. We call it plasmolysis. It's essentially imploding. All right, our last type of solution is hypotonic. So there is more water on the outside of the cell than there is on the inside of the cell, so the net movement of water is into the cell. So water is going in both these pictures. And if you put too much water in, what happens to your cell membrane?
Boom.
Boom. We call that boom cytolysis. Too much water moves in and the cell membrane bursts. Notice that this is just for animal cells. That's why it's only under the animal cell side. Plant cells do not undergo cytolysis, or it's really, really hard for them to. Okay? Instead, they just fill up their water vacuole, and that turns into turgor pressure. I'll write that bigger so you can see turgor. That's a R. Oh, man. Better? Turgor pressure. That's what allows a plant to stand up. All right. And that is all of our notes for today.